The other day, I made a mistake of uploading a post about the narcissist's mother and anti-mother. Immediately, all the aficionados of femme fatales emerged from the woodwork, insisting volubly, vociferously, on a further elaboration of the exact nature of the femme fatale. What is she capable of doing to the narcissist? What is the narcissist capable of doing to her? And what both of them are capable to doing to you, of doing to you. So today I'm going to make a brief note regarding the psychopathic female. Now, the majority of psychopaths are male. We have a diagnosis in the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual, antisocial personality disorder. And at the extreme end of the spectrum, we have psychopathy, as measured by the PCLR test, a test designed by Robert Hare. So, majority of people diagnosed with psychopathy or antisocial personality disorder are men. Only a small minority, anywhere between 1/4 and 1/3, are women. That is as opposed to narcissistic personality disorder, where women finally attained the long-sought equality with men. And now half of all narcissists are women. Still, there is tangible minority of psychopaths who are women. And to some extent, they are distinguished. They are distinct. They are not the same as male psychopaths, whereas male psychopaths tend to be mostly what is known as factor 1 psychopaths, primary psychopaths. Female psychopaths tend to be secondary psychopaths, factor 2 psychopaths. In other words, they tend to be very strong on impulse or lack of impulse control. They're very impulsive. They tend to have emotion dysregulation, which is reminiscent of borderline personality disorder. They are reckless. They're defiant, exactly like the primary narcissist, and in this sense, they're the same as the male psychopath. But they are still distinct in the sense that they have emotions. These emotions are overwhelming. They even have empathy and negative effects such as shame and guilt. So there is a serious difference between factor 1 and factor 2 psychopaths, and women tend to concentrate in the latter. Still, female psychopaths can definitely destroy your life. The psychopathic female creates a crazy-making space. It is reminiscent, or the equivalent, of the narcissist's shared fantasy. Within this crazy-making space, she entertains, she lures into, baits into, and then entertains, incorporates, digests, assimilates people around her. This crazy-making space is a vortex. It's a whirlpool into which the psychopathic female sucks in ever-increasing concentric circles everyone around her. She abuses people. But whereas the primary psychopath abuses people because of some goal, the primary psychopath is goal-oriented. He wants sex, he wants money, and so on. The secondary psychopath, mainly the female psychopath, abuses people relationally, in interpersonal relationships. And in this sense, the female psychopath is very reminiscent of the male narcissist. So she abuses people in interpersonal relationships, smear campaigns. She would cheat with your best friend or colleague, or with the spouses of best friends and colleagues. She manipulates people by flirting or by begging for pity and sympathy, casting men in rescuer, savior roles. She charms, she beguiles, always the long-sought soulmate, the twin flame, perfect resonance and fit, the other long-lost half. This is a role that female psychopaths play. The female psychopath sex is fantasy come true, fantasy in the flesh. Again, in this sense, female psychopaths are very reminiscent of females with borderline personality disorder. Female psychopaths can even play the demure or shy individual. They can bait and lure others by displaying ostentatiously, exhibiting their vulnerabilities and neediness. And in this sense, female psychopaths are very good at imitating codependence. Or female psychopaths can be extroverted and histrionic. And whatever role the female psychopath chooses, and yes, the female psychopath can switch between these roles because they're not reflective of her true character or true nature. These are just assumed cosplays. So whichever role she chooses to play, the shy, vulnerable, fragile, brittle, in need of protection, in need of help, damsel in distress on the one hand, or the extroverted, histrionic, sex bomb, sex pot, honey pot, trap or whatever, whichever role she somehow introduces into her fantasy, into her crazy making space, even the most reluctant. Her chaos has what we call in chaos theory an attractor. She attracts people from without and from within. So a female psychopath is highly attractive, not necessarily in the sexual sense, but in the total sense. Her totality is inexorable, irresistible, and luring, and intoxicating, and addictive, and you don't even know why. Because if you analyze each of the ingredients, or each of the elements, or each of the components separately, there's nothing very special about the female psychopath. Sometimes she's ugly, sometimes she's stupid, sometimes she's, manly, sometimes. Very often, the female psychopath is an amazing agglomeration of deficiencies and deformities and disadvantages and frailties and weaknesses and vulnerabilities and yet when you put all of them together, they somehow constitute a source of energy. They somehow empower the female psychopath over you, and you can't help it. So this is, if you find yourself in the orbit of a woman who exerts influence over you in ways which are a mystery, which you cannot decode, which you cannot understand, cannot comprehend, you're very likely in the presence of a female psychopath, especially if she introduces into the relationship a lot of drama, a lot of acting out, a lot of crazy making, a lot of unpredictability, uncertainty, indeterminacy, which is with a tinge of menace, something ambiently threatening, something ill-fitting, and causes you to be upset or unsettled or ill at ease. And this is the uncanny valley reaction. The role of the crazy making space, exactly like the shared fantasy in narcissism, is to provide an optimal environment for the expression of the psychopath's grandiosity and sadism, as well as for the attainment of her goals. The goal of the female psychopath is no different to the goal of the male psychopath. Power. Money is power. Sex is power. Sex is having power over someone, and the psychopath's sex is usually aggressive, sometimes violent, coercive in many cases. The narcissist's sex is not coercive because the narcissist needs to feel irresistible. The psychopath sex is coercive because the psychopath needs to be in control, needs to own, needs to possess. The power is the narcissistic supply of the psychopath. Power is the fuel that keeps the psychopath going. And so the female psychopath is no different. And whereas a narcissist shared fantasy has several functions which have nothing to do with power. The narcissist shared fantasy is about reenacting or replaying early childhood conflicts with parental figures, especially the mother. The narcissist shared fantasy is about generating a paracosm within which the narcissist is godlike and therefore safe. It's about safety and stability and so on. These are the functions of the shared fantasy in narcissism. the functions of the psychopath shared fantasy, the psychopath's crazy making space, is about power. Chaos renders the psychopath the only island of stability. Chaos empowers the psychopath. Chaos makes the psychopath indispensable, the only form of protection and the only found of predictability and stability. So chaos is crucial. Psychopaths create chaos in order to accumulate power and then rule over people and make them do their bidding. So this goal orientation is not absent in the female psychopath. The female psychopath's space, dramatic space, is a theater set, a stage upon which she enacts her antisocial amorality play. And in the psychopath's amorality play, there's no good and evil. There's no right and wrong. There's only it works, it's not working. It doesn't work. So if efficacy is the key, whereas in a typical morality play, it's good versus evil, it's Manichaean. In the psychopath's amorality play, the emphasis is on efficacy and attainment, goal attainment. So, but it has to be done in a way that would convert people or reduce people into actors in a theater production or a movie, into two-dimensional NPCs in a video game, no? And the only way to accomplish this is to terrify people, destabilize them, threaten them, to the point that they lose agency and come to rely on the psychopath. And of course, the narcissist, to a much more minimal extent, uses the same technique with intermittent reinforcement. Okay, so there is this amorality play, and everyone in this female psychopath's life is a prop in the theater production. And the play is about her. The play is about her antisocial impulses, the gratification of these impulses, the elevation and mythologizing of these impulses, and so on. She converts her psychopathy into an ideology, I would even say a religion, within this dramatic space. It's theater at the disposal and at the service of a private religion, with everyone around her as a worshipper, without remorse or guilt or shame or empathy. The female psychopath mercilessly and relentlessly metes out what she considers to be just desserts, what people deserve. She rewards people, she punishes people, she takes advantage of people if they're stupid enough to be taken advantage of, which is their fault. She is there to consume. She is the great consumer, and people are raw materials. People are fed into the psychopathic device of the psychopathic machine. They're processed. The female psychopath acts mechanically, fearlessly, impulsively, and with determination, like some kind of inexorable automaton or juggernaut, a force of nature. In a way, culturally conditioned as we are to regard all women as weak and ineffectual, effete, well-meaning and maternal, but effete, to some extent stupid and incapable of attaining goals the way men are. That's a stereotype. And no, we haven't got rid of it yet. It's still prevalent. Look at the United States nowadays. So we are used to see women this way. And the female psychopath uses this. She leverages this blind spot, our blindness, the stereotype that blinds us to the reality of femininity and so on. And the female psychopath uses this against us. And that renders her far more insidious, nefarious, pernicious, subterranean, and dangerous than the male, her male kin, her male brother, so to speak. The male psychopath could be underhanded. The male psychopath could be a great thespian, great actor. The male psychopath could pretend to be prosocial and communal. And in this sense, sometimes you don't see the male psychopath coming. But by virtue of being a male, the male psychopath is less dangerous than the female psychopath because our defenses are up. We regard men as much more efficacious and therefore much more dangerous. So whenever we come across a man, someone with the one set of genitalia, we become more defensive, more protective, more alert, more hypervigilant, more suspicious. And we tend to lower our guard and lose these defenses with a female. And the female psychopath knows it. And she's subtle, she's passive-aggressive, she's surreptitious, she stealthily undermines the foundations rather than overtly bombard or siege the fortress or the citadel. The male psychopath's thespian capacity is hampered by the male psychopath's grandiosity. He feels humiliated by the very need to pretend and to act, to manipulate and to supplicate. The female of the species, the female psychopath, is not averse to any of this. She would cling, she would act needy, she would display her vulnerability, alleged, ostensible vulnerabilities. She would beg, she would supplicate, she would demean and humiliate herself. She would do anything to capture you, to captivate you, to lasso you in, to put you on a leash, and then to confine you to a cage in her zoo, and to force you to play a role in a script of which she is the sole producer and director. And in this act of authorship, because she's an auteur, she creates something. It's a creative act. In this drama that she puts on her stage, on her personal stage, you are an inert element in many ways. Even as a victim, even as a sufferer, you are not perceived as someone who should have any grounds to complain. You don't have any right to any grievance, because to be a victim or a suffering entity, sufferer, in the big theater of the female psychopath is an honor. You should be grateful for the role allocated and assigned to you. Your suffering is meaningful, and it is rendered meaningful by the presence, especially presence of mind, of the female psychopath. In this sense, the female psychopath is a religious cult leader and creates cults. But she will not hesitate to tear you apart, to shreds, to annihilate and eliminate and eradicate and obliterate you and everything and everyone that's dear to you. She will not think twice. There's no hesitancy. She's ruthless and callous and relentless to the extreme. You are fodder, cannon fodder. You're raw material. You're nothing. You're nobody. You're non-entity. And it is this impersonal nature of the female psychopath's abuse that drives people insane, drives them crazy. And they're trying to make sense of the female psychopath. They can't wrap their minds around the fact that as far as she's concerned, people are numbers, statistics, minerals. She is kind of on an extraction mission. She's a miner in a mine, and she extracts these minerals and so on, and then she molds them and shapes them. And it's, again, there is a strong artistic streak in this endeavor. And the female psychopath regards her victims the way a sculptor would regard a slab of marble. She sees the victimhood potential in them, and then she chips at the marble until they become the perfect victims. And perfection matters to the female psychopath. And throughout this absolutely insane sequence of events, the female psychopath can and does experience empathy, flashes of empathy, overwhelming emotions, including remorse, shame, and guilt. And yet they are somehow not actionable. They don't drive her to action. It's as if she's experiencing these emotions vicariously, by proxy, or as if she's watching them through virtual reality goggles. She is experiencing the emotions, but they're not really hers. They're simulated. They're virtual. Yeah. So she is removed from her emotions. There is a remove. There's some distance between the female psychopath and her emotions, or generally speaking, between the secondary psychopath and his or her emotions. And it is this incapacity to convert emotions into attitudes and motivations. It is this incapacity that renders the female psychopath as dangerous as the male psychopath, the primary psychopath. And whereas the primary psychopath's motivations are usually money, sex, power, access, contacts, you name it, material goods, wealth, the motivations or the goals of the female secondary psychopath, typically secondary psychopath, her motivations, her goals are to express herself. And who are you? You're the canvas. You're the slab of marble. You're the raw material to be molded and shaped. In her artistic endeavor, she legitimizes her antisocial impulses, her psychopathic urges and drives. Freud would have said that there is an id with no superego, and to some extent no ego, because all stripes of psychopaths are defiant and reckless. But her quest is self-actualization. And it is unfortunate. The only way for her to self-actualize is to stage dramas that involve the suffering and victimization and annihilation and humiliation and disintegration of other people. It's unfortunate. It's the same way a serial killer. The only way for a serial killer to express himself is to kill people. The only way for the sadistic sexual predator to express himself is sadistic sex. And the only way for the pedophile to express himself is by having sex with children. It's the same with a secondary psychopath. Her only way to express herself is to victimize people, to sacrifice them. It's a religion. She is the godhead or the goddess, and human sacrifice is part of the religion. And you are the human part of the human sacrifice. Before you know it, your life and your health are gone. Your mind is traumatized beyond repair, exposed as you were to the soft pulchritude of almost alien evil, reified. Jordan Peterson got it right when he said that it is the encounter with evil that traumatizes, not any objective reality, but the fact that you suddenly wake up to the realization that you have been embraced and you have made love to and you have shared your life with evil incarnated.